I hope you are ready to kill it in 2025. I know I am. So let's talk about my goals. I'm not going to be sharing specific project goals per se. I know a lot of people talk about make 9 and everything I want to knit in 2025, making whole year worth of plans a year in advance. I learned pretty quickly that that approach does not make sense for me. It doesn't really serve me to share my specific project plans on the internet because inevitably, when they don't happen, I'll feel some level of embarrassment or disappointment that I did not do what I said I was going to do. But I do want to share 2 rules, I guess you could say, that I'll be following in 2025, and a handful of loose goals, intentions for the year that are not project specific or yarn specific or pattern specific. So my rules, I have 2 rules, as I mentioned, and my goal with giving myself these rules is to facilitate a stash reduction. So I mentioned this in my 2024 year in review video, where I really want to refocus my efforts on reducing my stash and knitting through what I have. I'm not putting any numbers on it. I'm not committing to a no buy again, but I do want to move the needle a little bit more than I was able to in 2024. And I think these 2 rules are going to help me get there. So the first rule I'm calling 3 out, 1 in, which basically means that for every 3 projects that I finish in 2025, I will allow myself to buy 1 project worth of yarn. This is not saying that I have to buy yarn for a project after completing 3 things, but more so that the option is there. If I complete 3 projects, then I will have earned a privilege for myself to buy yarn for a new project. So that's kind of the idea here. And I don't want to cheat the system and say I'm going to knit 3 pairs of socks and then buy an oversized sweater worth of fingering weight yarn. The hope is that it will help facilitate a gradual stash reduction throughout the year without committing to not buying any yarn or being super restrictive about when I buy yarn and what I buy. The second rule I'm hoping to follow in 2025 is the 2-week rule, which means when I do buy yarn, which I'm sure I will at several points in 2025, I have to be in a position to cast that project on within 2 weeks of buying the yarn. So one of the patterns that I've noticed in my yarn purchasing tendencies in the past is that I would purchase yarn for a specific project. Like, I don't really have a problem with buying yarn for no project in mind. I always have a project in mind. I think the problem is that I will buy yarn for that project with no concrete plans to start that project anytime soon. That has resulted in yarn collecting dust in my stash for months and months, sometimes years, without me using it, and this growing sense of guilt for not having executed those project plans, because inevitably I come across something more exciting, more interesting, something new and shiny that excites me more than the yarn that I purchased for a project I planned to make 18 months ago. So I think this will keep things moving, so to speak, and make sure that I don't purchase yarn that sits in my stash for a long time and collects dust and makes me feel guilty. So those are the 2 rules that are going to help me smash some stash in 2025. Oh my gosh, that's so corny. I also have 4 goals that I hope to achieve in 2025 with my knitting. I'm afraid to even say this out loud because I've never done this before, but my first goal is to knit 12 pairs of socks. And I know if you watched my 2024 year in review, you know I fell off the wagon hard with the sock knitting in 2024. I committed to knitting 1 sock a month, which I successfully did throughout the whole year of 2023. And then after June last year, I was just like, I don't know. The desire completely left my body. And I've talked about this with sock knitting before. It tends to come in waves. You know, it ebbs and flows. And yeah, I totally fell off the wagon with that. But I counted, and I think I have 13 full skeins of sock yarn in my stash. And again, I want to use up stash, and I think this challenge is going to be a great way for me to facilitate that. So my friend Halima mentioned that she wanted to do this for 2025, and I inserted myself into her plans, and I said, I will also do that, and I'm going to knit 1 pair of socks per month. I've never done this before. My concern is that the sock knitting is going to sort of take over my knitting life, and I'm not going to have a lot of capacity to knit other things that I like to knit, which is primarily sweaters. That's my favorite thing to knit. And I do have a few sweater plans and garment plans that I am quite excited about. And I hope it doesn't result in me sort of knitting socks and only socks just to keep up with the 12 pairs in the year. So if I find that that pace of sock knitting is too aggressive, I will take a step back and I won't feel bad about it. But for now, the plan is to knit 1 pair of socks every month in 2025. The second goal that I have for 2025 is to knit the perfect sweater vest. So I plan to make a video that talks about this a little bit more in depth, but I hate my neighbor's dog so much. I've made 3 sweater vests in the past, and for one reason or another, they haven't quite been exactly what I was hoping to achieve with those projects. And I am determined to get to the bottom of what would make the perfect sweater vest. And I'm really confident that I'm close to cracking it. So I definitely want to knit at least 1 vest in 2025 to test it out and see if I can nail the fit. My third goal for the year is to knit something with cashmere yarn. So I impulse purchased some cashmere a couple of weeks ago. So I have 100 grams of, I think, DK weight cashmere yarn in 2 different colors. And I think I'll either knit some type of winter accessory, either a hat or an ear warmer or something like that, which is kind of a jumping off point. What I would love to do is knit an entire garment in a cashmere blend yarn. I don't think I'll knit a garment in 100% cashmere because cashmere is very soft, very delicate, very prone to pilling. So I don't think it quite makes sense for a sweater. Before I even do that, I want to knit myself a luxurious scarf, simple, luxurious, warm, cozy scarf and a cashmere yarn. I think it'll be so nice to snuggle up in it in the depths of winter. So that's kind of a dream project bouncing around in my head, and why not make 2025 the year for that to happen? My fourth and final goal for 2025 is to crochet a blanket. Now, I had set a bit of a track record. Until 2024, I would make at least one pretty large crochet project a year. Generally 1 project, and then everything else will be knit. In 2024, I crocheted some snowflakes to send to my cousins that live in Texas. But outside of that, I did not crochet anything. Everything else I made for the year was knit. And my husband's best friend, he actually officiated our wedding. Years ago, he asked if I could make him a blanket. I said yes, and I proceeded not to make that blanket, and it has been years at this point, 3, maybe 4. So yeah, I want to finally follow through on that. I found the perfect pattern. 2025 will be the year I finally crochet that blanket and get it off my conscience. I'm excited to see what 2025 brings for my knitting and crochet, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye. Oh my gosh, it's so close. I hope I don't have any boogers. I think I'm good.